You guys have blessed my soul, your attention, your being here, first of all, and then your attention, and even the conversations I've been blessed to have. I'm grateful to God for you. I pray that these things that we have given our attention to would honor Him and bless each of you. Let's just review. We're now on the final session in terms of teaching. I've tried to frame it so that you can remember by the letter C, each of them. There's a key word that I want you to take home in your hearts to remember a Christ-centered marriage. First word, companionship. Let's say it together. Companionship. Second, covenant. Third, character. Fourth, communication. And now, closeness. I chose this word because it speaks of intimacy. And I want to remind us, and I pray that all of you see this, from beginning to end, the theme has been the same. And it has not been primarily discussing marriage between a man and a woman, but primarily the parable of the profound, God and His people. And it is true even here. From beginning to end, it is the big picture is describing something profound about God's purposes and design. Let me begin. We're talking about intimacy, and this is something that I dare say that is not communicated well enough by Christians. Of all people in the world, we should be the ones who talk about it. We're the only ones who understand it rightly from the Word of God. It is something not to be afraid to communicate and understand. Marriage is designed for intimacy. It is designed for closeness. It is designed for two souls to draw near. It is designed for this. You'll notice there, if you look with me at page 89, marriage is designed for intimacy. Every healthy couple wants intimacy, but there are different kinds of intimacy. When you pursue your beloved aiming at a different kind of intimacy than your beloved is aiming at, feelings of isolation rather than intimacy are experienced. So we can have this happen, pursuing to be close, and we actually don't feel close. We feel in some way more distant. And yet every healthy couple wants intimacy. I suggested last time that communication is more than verbal. And now remember, the Latin, Italian ideas, communificare, the idea of bringing two into one, the act of making two into one. The idea of communication, I think, finds its epitome not merely in verbal, but in physical. I submit to you that sexual intimacy is one of the most intense forms of communication. It is one of the most intense ways that one human being expresses his and her love for the other human being. You communicate it through sensory perception of the most intense kind. This is what makes it so powerful. This is also the reason it's so powerfully abused. Anything that is powerful, designed by God for good in a God-centered way, becomes one of the most powerful agents of evil when God is removed, when it's taken away from God's design and purpose and misused. I don't think any of you would really disagree that one of the greatest abuses of one human being to another in this world today is in this area. Sexual abuse, sex trafficking, prostitution, child molestation, and yes, even pornography. It is a powerful, addictive draw. And it says something there. The power is not wrong. The object of it is the issue. If it's not Christ-centered, then it's idolatry. And it's sinful. For a Christ-centered marriage, if we are to have Christ-centered marriages, then only there will we experience sexual intimacy the way God designed, in all the fullness of its blessing, in all its glory, goodness and joy. This is perhaps one of the most powerful metaphors and illustrations of the whole grand dynamic of the chief end of man. You exist to glorify God and enjoy Him. And this particular subject in marriage has a unique and powerful way of illustrating how really to honor one another and enjoy them. I pray that you keep this in mind as we go through the lesson. Let me show you a few stats on the idea of nonverbal communication. Number one, nonverbal communication, it is said by one study done out of Harvard that words only mattered in this study, according to their metric, I don't always trust, but nevertheless, these are the numbers, 7%. That words only mattered 7%. Number two, the tone was 38%. And number three, the nonverbal remainder was 55%. Here's the point. God says that the power of life and death is in the tongue. If our words are that powerful, then how much more powerful, how much more significant, how much more reach and leverage do we have to communicate non-verbally by touch in order to make one? Do you remember the grand theme we started with on last night, the first session? The two shall become one. Here it is. This is the act of the two becoming one. It's the most intense experience of the two becoming one. It is something to be honored. It is a powerful means of communication. It speaks in terms of a total meaning transfer. It speaks more effectively than words. And with that in mind, I do want to get to our principles of sexual intimacy on the next page, page 90. As we get there, I would like to just remind us of I don't have time to get into it, but I'm itching just to remind you of the Song of Songs, the Song of Solomon. It's one of the most, it's one of the most euphemistic but overtly sexual books in the Bible. It really is describing, and I love how it so beautifully describes sexual intimacy between a husband and a wife. It describes it in the form of a garden. And here's the point. A garden takes work. You have to cultivate it. You have to pull the weeds out. And you have to make certain you water, sow, and provide the necessary nutrients, do the tilling. You have to cultivate intimacy. If you allow just animalistic instinct, if you just allow sort of crass sexual drive, then you're not experiencing a Christ-centered closeness. You have to be intentional. You have to invest. You have to cultivate. You have to, like a garden, it begins with hard work. There's clearing the land, and that's not easy. There's tilling the ground, and that's not fun. There's digging holes, and that's not most enjoyable. There is seeding. There is regular watering, and there is constant weeding. And all of this is necessary. And my point in sharing these things is all the other sessions lead up to this. Like the Puritans remind us, don't touch her body till you touch her heart. Don't start the physical communication until you have the verbal communication. don't deal with those things until you understand the goal is companionship of the most intimate kind. And the vulnerability you render in intimacy is protected by covenant. This is why only in marriage is sex honoring to God. And there it is wonderfully so. The Puritans used to describe sexual intimacy in marriage in a very powerful way. Now, you got to imagine you're in their setting, you're in their world. You're in the 1600s in northern England. In the winter, it snows and it's very cold. And, well, snow, cold weather, no electricity, no gas pipelines. If you don't have heat, you die, right? That's the way it is. And by the way, back then, without fire, you couldn't cook. So this illustration is just perfect. They described, and imagine now, a small little house in the north of England with a family. It's in the winter. And they said sexual intimacy is like fire. Without it, you die. Now watch this. But if the fire is in the wrong place in the house, it destroys it. The fire is only life-giving when it is in the fireplace. In the fireplace, it gives warmth and vitality and thriving in the home. But when the fire is taken out of its rightful place, it destroys the home. It burns it down. Powerful illustration. When your sexual intimacy, when your sexuality is in the right place, in the protected covenant of marriage, and when it's kept in the right place in the home, when all the other things have been leading up to cultivate it, to keep it, just like you need to a fireplace, well, then it causes flourishing. It's a fruit, not a root. It's a fruit of a healthy marriage. It's not the root of it. It serves in some ways as a barometer. It tells you where the health of the marriage is in some way. The key, though, that I also want to bring out of this is that when you move it to the wrong place, when you seek sexual satisfaction in the wrong place, it has the power to destroy the marriage. So keep in mind, this is a powerful gift for God's glory, for the blessing and honor of your beloved, and for your joy. It is one that we ought to steward well. Let's move now to those principles. What is this that we're talking about, biblically speaking, of sexual intimacy? The world is unashamed of their shameful perspective and practices, while the church is ashamed of our unshamed perspective and practices. It's all backward. It's all wrong. We are the ones who should say, no, we know what it's about. We know what it's for. We know that it's a metaphor. And we enjoy it rightly. And by the way, it is the most enjoyable right there. Every other form of experiencing sexual satisfaction is tainted, corrupted. It's marred with guilt and shame everywhere else if it's outside the fireplace, even with a power to destroy. But inside the fireplace, there's no shame. There's no guilt. It's wonderful. It's life-giving. It's celebratory. That's where it ought to be. Christians need to be clear about this, unashamed about this. God made us sexual beings. It wasn't accidental, and he wasn't embarrassed. He designed it. And he doesn't want us to be embarrassed. He wants us to understand what it's for and how to honor him with it. And I can tell you, this is a subject that many Christians just have a massive disconnect. A massive disconnect. It is a fruit, not a root. The harmony in the garden was expressed in sexual terms. In the Song of Solomon, it was powerful. It's presented as beautiful, as pleasant, as full of life, as orderly, as wild, yet cultivated, as fruitful, as aromatic, of wonderful fragrance, as private. It was a place for retreat, a place for relaxation. It was a place for meditation. It was an echo and a hint of life without the curse. Can I say this? I'm going to preempt what I was going to wait for, like this grand buildup, I can't do it. I've got to wait. I can't wait. I got to tell you right now, this is the point. In the grand picture, from beginning to end, the grand climactic end is this. God has designed sexual intimacy to be in some profound way, a metaphor, the ecstasy, a metaphor of intimacy with God, of the delight of paradise, of the closeness of the creature to the holy God. In other words, the drive we ought to have for heaven is something of a sex drive, a powerful longing, a wonderful eagerness for that pleasure. It's designed to remind us that's what he designed us for. The Puritans used to talk about how the longing that we ought to have for heaven is just that. And that the being with God in Revelation 21, where it emphasizes that the bride is coming down adorned for the bridegroom. And it says 4 times over that God will be with them, and he himself will be their God, and they will be his people, and he will dwell with them. Over and over, there's this intimacy of togetherness, this closeness, and it's the picture of heaven. There is to be experienced in heaven the greatest ecstasy, the greatest pleasure, the greatest guilt-free, shame-free, the greatest pleasure ever. Close to God. Well, that's the idea, and the Song of Solomon celebrates it that way. It's like we ought to see and understand that's what it's like. Everything then in the marriage, you're investing to build for this taste, this small little metaphor, this picture, this little example of an experience that hints at paradise. By the way, you notice the Song of Solomon uses sexuality in the metaphor of a garden. Before there was sin, where was Adam and Eve? In a garden. It's the picture of paradise. This is the idea. The elating pleasure is what David says, at your right hand are pleasures forevermore. This is a picture. So I want to connect all those dots, and I want to ask you to remember with me the beauty of God's design and purposes. And it's much bigger than ourselves, and certainly much bigger than our misunderstanding and misuses and self-centered abuses. Sexual pleasure is designed for intimacy, but intimacy is designed for more than sexual pleasure. Romance is but a small part of a much greater reality of love. We tend in our culture to idolize romance when we need to see more romance in terms of service to love. Here's the point. I want us to see as we go into the biblical principles that this has everything to do with the gospel, even right here. And the gospel, if you remember one thing, I'm going to state it now and I'll remind you after. The gospel has to do with giving, not getting. It is about God giving. And rightly, in a Christ-centered marriage, your closeness, your sexual intimacy will be about giving, not getting. I hope to explain that more as we go. Let's look at some of these principles. The first one, number one, sexual intimacy in marriage is, there we are, we have it. Number one, it is holy and pure. And number two, and I get this sexual intimacy is holy and pure because as I have been trying to describe, God made them from the beginning, male and female, called it very good, and they were both naked and not ashamed. And then Hebrews 13:4 says it plainly, let marriage be held in honor among all and let the marriage bed be undefiled. And the Song of Solomon, 8 chapters, celebrates this very thing. It is holy, it is, again, sacred and pure. It's good. Number two, sexual intimacy is not the basis of marriage, and marriage is not primarily sexual. It's not the basis of it. It's not the root. It's the fruit. We didn't start there, but a healthy marriage that rightly invests and cultivates everything from companionship, covenant, character, communication verbally, now is blessed and crowned with communication physically. Number three, love gives, seeking to satisfy your spouse first. This is a vital principle, and it is one of humility. So let me just remind us of that now. I have on the next page, you'll see that little point about humility, but let me just advance forward and mention what I mean about humility right now. So the issue that I'm after with humility is this, and this is a huge takeaway. So if you get nothing else out of this session, or if you think you're experienced enough or whatever else, or you just, I don't know. My prayer is that you're teachable from the Word of God and you think through these principles. If you get nothing else, though, I think this is a big game changer. This is one of those revolutionary light bulbs. Ding. Oh. What distinguishes a Christ-centered marriage in its intimacy from any other? It's fundamentally this. While you have a strong drive, and typically the male has a stronger sex drive, typically, and is certainly much more visually stimulated and much more rapidly stimulated, easily to be aroused, much more compared to the woman. While there is this drive, this desire, the key is to deny self by seeking to satisfy her first. A very critical dimension to this is the male leading, the husband leading by loving her, leading by all the while having a drive, a desire, a longing, a wanting, but being intentional that she is pleased before he is. This is a critical dynamic. This is how, again, the principle of the gospel is indeed applied. It's the idea that the gospel is about giving, not receiving. The gospel is giving. So when the husband loves like Christ loved and gave his life, down at this level of closeness, this fruit, this wonderful fruit of a cultivated garden, a cultivated marriage, now producing and blossoming and aromatic, the dynamic of the man is that he blesses his wife, he cherishes her, he loves her, he touches her carefully, and he does all that he can. And I'm not going to go into detail about how. You can figure that out, but the idea, because the Bible doesn't tell me to do that, but what the Bible does tell me is that the very principle is obvious and easy. He is to serve by bringing her to satisfaction first. And then he's easily satisfied. And if this is how, and again, you can't feel guilty over, the times when that doesn't happen or whatever, but the point is, where's your heart? If your heart is intending and purposing and cultivating that pattern and that habit, what it is the male is constantly modeling a self-denial to serve the wife, to love her, and to use his sexual desires, watch this, not selfishly, but to please her. His drive is now turned to serve. The great problem with pornography, people think, pornography doesn't hurt anybody. And I know you can go into the stats about, what about the women you're looking at? And the money behind it all and the evil that comes from it and all the rest. And so there's no question, it's an evil reality and you're supporting evil when you're doing it. But here's the thing that sometimes is missed. Fundamentally in your heart, it does damage you. Because what it does is it strengthens what is contrary to the gospel in sexuality. Here's how it does it. We like the benefits of marriage without the responsibilities. We like to enjoy the blessings of marriage without having to give. In other words, it's a lot easier to not cultivate the marriage, to not invest and do all the hard work that leads up to this beautiful fruit. It's a lot easier just to turn all that sexual drive into a self-gratification. I can get my climactic experience by just looking at some filth. And the damage, the evil, is that you've just turned it to self. The sex drive is now for self. The sex drive is used to satisfy me and not another. And you missed the whole point. It's not for each of you to madly go and satisfy yourselves. It's for you to serve each other, love each other, to communicate love that way. And the man should take the lead. Did you follow me on this? You see what I'm saying? The danger of pornography is it's a paradigm issue. It's bigger than just the moment. It's bigger than just the logistical, practical thing. No, it's a big theological thing. You misunderstand the whole point of your sex drive. It's not for you to be satisfied first. It's not for you just to be gratified. So you know what happens in marriage oftentimes when I deal with couples who are having sex issues? You know what happens? What I see is, and pardon my expression, but I think, you're all adults here, right? So you need to just, be mature about this. But the reality is what happens in a marriage where they're failing to honor God in their sexual intimacy, when it's not Christ-centered, what tends to happen, and I'll just pick on the men, is basically they masturbate using their wife's body. Is that a good enough picture? They're pleasing themselves using someone else's body. That's not what God intended. Are you with me? You hear what I'm saying? This is serious. This is a game changer. You approach it differently. You realize, wait a second. I've got this incredible drive, this incredible want. What a wonderful opportunity to turn it to serve her. In every way you communicate, you are sensitive, you make certain she's comfortable, but however God, he's given you means and ability to explore in this area, but you please her. You please her first. And when she's pleased, it doesn't take much to please you. And then you both experience something of the point, and that is love. By giving to the other. Let's look at the principles now. Continue. instead of love gives and seeks then to satisfy the spouse first. Number 4, God created the marital union to be satisfying, and I'm going to break that down in further detail in a moment. Sexual pleasure in marriage is not sinful and forbidden, but designed and encouraged by God. If you don't believe me, well, I want you to join me now I got one more, as we go into those principles of satisfaction. Did you catch these? Number 4 again, he created it to be satisfying. You know what happens often in a marriage is that oftentimes when frustration is experienced, sexual frustration, it's because the wife isn't satisfied. She doesn't come to climax, and that happens over and over and over and over. And pretty soon, it really begins to affect her own drive, and it really becomes artificial. It really becomes something that's not a love encounter. It feels almost used. And here are some very deep issues. It's designed to be satisfying. If she's not getting satisfied, then the man needs to take an assessment and correct. God encourages the pleasure. He encourages this to happen. Let's look at the number 6. The 6th principle, sexual intimacy should be regular. Now, for this one, I do want to ask you to turn in your Bibles to 1 Corinthians chapter 7. In 1 Corinthians 7, Paul is dealing with the very subject that we're talking about. They asked him, is it good for a man to not have sexual relations with a woman? That's what they asked. They wrote a letter to Paul and said, hey, apostle, tell us, is it good? You know why? Because they're coming from the Greeks, and they've been influenced by Plato, who's a dualist, who says, anything physical is inherently evil and anything spiritual is detached from the physical. They also influenced by the Stoics and influenced by, again, the Greeks have this dualism who said, basically sexuality is just sinful inherently. That's not a biblical worldview at all. It's the picture of the ecstasy of paradise. So Paul writes in response. Look at it, 1 Corinthians chapter 7. He says, now concerning the matter of which you wrote, it is good for a man to not have sexual relations with a woman. He says, no, that's not the answer. He says, verse 2, but because of the temptation to sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife and each woman her own husband. What he does is he first outlines his answer by reminding them of where the fire goes. The fire goes in the fireplace only. It's only in marriage, a husband and a wife, one husband to one wife together for life. That's the design, that's the purpose. Only there is sexuality to be expressed. Now, verse 3, the husband should give to his wife. Isn't that interesting? This is radical. This is in a culture where you would never tell a man on the street in the first century, it's your responsibility to give to her. What? No, the man was, he was the pater lex. He's the law. He was the one that he ruled. The woman served him in everything. But here, right out of the gate, he starts with the husband, the responsible party, the one who should take lead. And he says, this is how you love her. This is how you lead her. You do it by giving to her. And literally, he's talking about sexuality. The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights. That's sexual rights for satisfaction. So all that I just said about the man taking the lead to do that, well, here's a text that makes that very plain. He goes on and says, and likewise the wife to her husband. And I find it striking because that's countercultural to say, oh, and by the way, the wife should too. He didn't say the wife's the one responsible to satisfy you, man. No. Let's start with the man. You're responsible. And then she also serves you. You both serve each other in love. Verse 4, the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. You see what he did? Start with the husband, go to the wife, talk about the wife, come back to the husband. The point is the accent is on the husband, and in each point, it's the other one has rights. You don't. You don't approach sexuality by entitlement. I have rights, you need to give them to me. You need to satisfy me. No. It's you have rights. And I've been given to you to satisfy you. It's a mind thing. It's how you think thing. It's a gospel thing. It's practicing theology thing in marriage. You come at sexuality this way and you say, oh, I'm here to serve you, to satisfy you. And then when he repeats it and comes back out of the chiasm, he basically says, so don't pool authority games like, oh no, I know you have rights, but I can't give this to you right now because this is my body. How much do we hear that today? This is my body. Well, from what I read, God is the one who owns that body that you're living in. And so you owe him your own life. So obey him in your body and stop this, oh, this is mine, I do what I want with my body. No. He's addressing head on the issue. She has rights, don't make entitlement the issue and don't claim authority over that. Serve one another in love. Verse 5, do not deprive one another. Notice that? You know what deprive suggests very plainly? What he already said. She's got rights, man. You serve her. So don't deprive, don't hold back what she deserves, what God has designed her to receive, for you to give. Deprive, hold back what ought to be. So do not deprive one another except perhaps by agreement. So let's look at this now in detail. Here's the point. It ought to be regular, and here's the exceptions. Let's walk through those. You can see them right here in the text. He says literally, do not deprive one another, and he's talking about intimacy. He's talking about sexual intimacy. He said, don't hold back. This is why I said it, that scriptures actually encourage it. It said fire is good. Put it in the home. Make sure it's right there in the fireplace and only there, but it's very good. Have it going. And then he says here's how. Don't deprive one another except, here are the exceptions, perhaps by agreement, number one, perhaps by agreement for a limited time. And the point he's going to get to, and that limited time reminds me that it ought to be regular. The default is to be regular. The exception is to have a break. And then he gives the exceptional clauses, except for a time. For what reason, Paul? Oh, I see. It's spiritual. He says that you may devote yourself to prayer. And here's the idea. I included the word fasting, right? You know why? Well, because here's the point. When you fast, what do you fast for? Why would you fast? Why would you fast from eating food? Food is necessary for you to live. Why would you fast? Well, you fast because the hunger pain, as it rises up within you, you feel that pain. It's an impulse you can't ignore. It's at that time that you're designed by your intentionality to fast, to go to the Lord in prayer. The hunger pain, it agitates the mind, and the agitation of the mind is designed to be expressively more dependent on God. And so you turn to him more eagerly, more earnestly, more frequently. You're turning to God because the hunger pains are aching and pulsing, and you keep going, oh God, it reminds me I need to pray, reminds me I need to pray, reminds me I'm such a dependent creature. I need. Well, what's happening here is Paul is saying, don't deprive one another of the sexual intimacy, except if you're going to do it like a fast. So that when you are withholding from your intimacy, it's prompting you spiritually to pray. If you've resolved to pursue together a spiritual pursuit, and you want to intentionally focus your mind on the Lord. That's the exception, he says, except if this is the case, except if you're going to do this for the sake of prayer, if you're going to fast in your intimacy for the sake of prayer. That's a powerful way to describe it. Then he says, but as if we didn't get it from the first time that he said, don't deprive, he's suggesting regularity. He says, except for a time. Now he wants to follow it up with a third emphasis on the regularity by saying, but then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. And so what you see is C, for an agreed upon time, and then D, but come together again, resuming afterwards. Now, have you all seen that in the text? Have you seen how that's a pretty powerful description of human sexuality in marriage? It's mind-blowing how clear it is. Well, with this in mind, let's look at that satisfaction. I mentioned that I wanted to come back to it, and I want to invite you to come over with me to Proverbs chapter 5. And I mentioned how God has designed us for this in marriage, how he encourages it. And now I want to show you in Proverbs, a book that speaks so powerfully, so clearly against misuse of sexuality, the abuses and seductions. And I want you to see how, yet at the same time, it speaks very boldly about satisfaction. If you would look with me at Proverbs chapter 5 and verse 15. And what we have is a powerful picture of satisfaction. Remember, in a desert land, water satisfies. In a desert land, you die without water. You're thirsting, and that thirst metaphor, like you see in Psalm 42, as a deer pants for the brooks of flowing water, it's a desperation. You want it so badly. And so therefore, when he says, drink water, he's saying, how do you satisfy your thirst? How do you satisfy the drive for sexual satisfaction, for sexual pleasure? How do you satisfy that? Well, he's going to, and trust me, you'll see this come through. Right now it's in metaphor. It's kind of camouflage with nice language. But he's talking about sexuality. You'll see. Drink water from your own cistern. The emphasis here is the father telling the son, make certain that you find your sexual satisfaction in your wife alone. And a cistern is a picture of this hewn rock that holds naturally born water from the sky, collects it there, and keeps it as a reservoir for you to drink from. And she's pictured first in the most sort of pedantic manner of this simple reservoir of refreshment for the husband. And he says, drink from her only. And then he goes further, and she's now more than a cistern. She's now, watch this, flowing water from your own well. Now she's a well. This is something drawn deep. It's fresh water from the ground. It's moving metaphor. It's describing greater depths. Verse 16, should your springs be scattered abroad? And now here's the point. First, the focus is on his satisfaction in her. Secondly, is that her refreshment, her sexual satisfaction, even her body, is designed by God to satisfy only him. The whole point here is, the first point is exclusivity. So look at number one, principles of sexual satisfaction. Number one is the exclusively between husband and wife. First, he's stressing, make certain it's only your wife. And then he's saying, look, and your wife is not given these things to satisfy anyone else. Look at that with me if you continue there. Verse 16, should your springs be scattered abroad, streams of water in the streets? You know what that kind of translates to today? Your wife's sexuality is not for other men to see. It's not to be broadcast. It's not public. And we're talking even, the idea of a man getting sexual pleasure by looking at a woman, perhaps in immodesty. This is exclusive to each other. And then look at verse 17. Let them, this is the streams of flowing water, the refreshment that the wife is blessed to give her husband. Let those streams of flowing water be for yourself alone and not for strangers with you. No one else enjoys her sexually, only you. Verse 18, let your fountain be blessed. Now that's important. It's not all about what she is doing for him. He's saying, you do this, man, husband, so that she would be blessed. You know what this points to? If a husband is looking at porn, you know what the wife feels like? She's not enough. She doesn't satisfy. And that's the point. The point is, bless the fountain that satisfies you sexually. Bless it. How do you bless a fountain? By rejoicing over it. You're satisfied in what it provides. So husbands, you're to bless your wives sexually by being satisfied in her alone. And when you're satisfied in her alone, you celebrate that. You let her know that. You bless her with that. You are a refreshment to me. You are a blessing to me. Notice again the strain here, let your fountain be blessed. That's the wife. Let the wife be blessed in her satisfying you sexually. And then he adds, and rejoice in the wife of your youth. A lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her, and here's where I said it was metaphoric, it was euphemistic, because now he just kind of breaks through all the camouflage and lets you know exactly what he was talking about. Let her breasts fill you at all times with delight. That's how you bless her. You bless her by allowing her to satisfy you. And only her. And that she satisfy no one else or stimulate anyone else sexually in any way. This is entirely exclusive between the husband and the wife. And it is something that is a mutual blessing. It is beautiful. Look again as he goes on. Rejoice in the wife of youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breasts fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated always in her love. I love that. You know why? Because he doesn't say be intoxicated with her sexuality. He doesn't say be intoxicated with her body, be intoxicated with her as an object. No. It is an expression of love. Be intoxicated in her love. And there's the mutuality. She loves as she gives to you as a fountain. And you love as you give to her. And as you both keep it exclusive. Let's walk through again. And we already looked at 1 Corinthians. So number 2 would be mutual, that the two are to serve one another. The two are to give one another. We see hints of it even here in that she is to satisfy only him and he is to only go to her for satisfaction. And the principle is bless her by being exclusive to her. This is all mutual. They serve one another and they express love to one another in the service. But number 3, we now move into delightfully. So satisfaction, sexual satisfaction, number 1 is exclusively between husband and wife. Number 2, mutually between husband and wife. And number 3, delightfully between husband and wife. Both are experiencing pleasure. If you're not both, then something's wrong. And that's what we see even right here in verse 19. Let her breast fill you at all times with delight. And be intoxicated. I love, again, be intoxicated, be drunk. It's overwhelming. It's like, wow. This is what the Song of Solomon repeatedly says, and both the husband and the wife says, your love, speaking sexually, your love is stronger than wine. It's something of a climatic human experience. It's one of the most powerful neurological experiences you can have for pleasure. And it was intended that way. Delightfully it is experienced, be intoxicated, be drunk with the pleasure of her love. And then lastly, number 4, it is also to be regular as we looked at. But notice that word in verse 19, always, and fill at all times. This is a message from beginning to end. It's from the old to the new covenant. It's the design. You are to be satisfied sexually in marriage only. And in marriage only, it is to be exclusively husband and wife. In marriage, it's to be mutually husband and wife. Delightfully husband and wife. And regularly in these ways. Now, I've mentioned humility, and I wanted to now express to you a little picture of that. We tend to talk a lot about love in marriage and in romance in particular, and it's kind of like a rose. Love is like the rose. Love is like the rose. It's what you see. It's what smells good. It's what looks good. It's what's beautiful. I remember as a young guy in the country, we would go to the fair, and I remember one of the exhibit halls, there was this beautiful display, the whole thing, massive hall, filled with all kinds of flowers. And then after the judges went through and they gave the blue ribbons, the first place prize to the rose. And I remember going up and I overheard one of the old farmers talking, and he said something about this, and it just stuck with me for the longest time. And I put it there in that little paragraph, but it goes something like this. He was asked, what's the secret? You have the most beautiful roses, prize-winning roses. Remember the metaphor. The rose is the love, the thing that people see, the thing that smells good, that looks good in the marriage. And he said, what's the secret? How do you get such beautiful roses? His answer? Well, he goes, it's easy. The secret is in the soil. Now, time out. Think about this. The secret's in the soil. But nowhere in the exhibit hall was the soil on display. No one gets a first prize for the soil. What am I getting at? The soil is it's the ground in which love grows. It determines the quality of the love. I would dare say that the soil is the prerequisite to the flower. And here's my point. The soil is the humility. Without the humility, you will not have the rose. You have to have this gospel mentality of the denial of self and the total satisfaction, the contentment of denying self for the sake of your beloved. When both of you have this attitude that I prefer the other as more important than myself, and I consider the other's needs before my own. When I recognize I exist in this marriage to love and give to him or her. When you approach the whole thing with humility as the soil, it's there that you will have the rose. The rose grows and is beautiful and fragrant and is blessed, prize-winning only in the right soil. And isn't this exactly the point of the gospel? What is the gospel in Philippians chapter 2? Right after he says, make my joy complete by being of the same mind, being of the same purpose, and prefer one another as more important than yourself, and look out for the other's interests before your own. And then he says, and have this mind in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who although he existed in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, to be held onto, to be entitled, to be demanded, but instead he emptied himself by pouring out, as it were, the entitlements, pouring out his prerogatives, pouring out what he could demand. He emptied himself by taking on the form of a man, and being found in the likeness of human form, he humbled himself to the point of death, even death on a cross. Humble himself. The gospel, the love that God has in the gospel, is the rose that grows in the soil of Christ's humility. Without Christ's humility, you have not this love of God. And I dare say in your marriages, without this Christ-like humility, you will not have the love, the fruit that blesses, that renders the satisfaction that you are designed to have. Well, right there, I want to bring us to a close. I do want to remind you of, again, as I close this, let's just think about this last point about pleasure, about the rose. Humility is necessary. It's self-denial. But isn't this, and this is what I tried to say earlier about the idea that here's probably the most powerful picture of glorifying God and enjoying him. Here it is. You come and you render yourself in humility to, as it were, lift up your beloved, and men take the lead in this, and you please her first. You love her. You cherish her. You make her, you bless and satisfy her first. And as you do that, you are in that way way, elevating her, and that's where you find your joy. It models glorifying and enjoying. It is a picture then in a microcosm of the very thing we're made for. We are made to be humble, to glorify God, not ourselves. And in glorifying God, we get our greatest joy. We're made for this kind of pleasure. We're made for this exact thing, this design. We're created for pleasure, and it is designed to remind us of God, of the Creator, of His purpose to join us to Him. Therefore, the thing that gives pleasure has a deeper purpose than the thing. Pleasure was not created to promote idolatry. Therefore, sexuality does not exist to make much of sexuality. It is intended to make much of Christ. Pleasure is intended to induce something deeper than the joy of a moment. It is intended to strengthen and cultivate a growing spiritual dimension in the marriage. A delightful love, a growth and a warmth of companionship, a closeness that you cannot otherwise experience between two human beings. Total vulnerability and total pleasure. It's intended to amaze you. It's not just about the joy and the power and the glory of pleasure itself, but it's intended to amaze you about God, His design, His architecture, His majesty. The pleasure exists to make much of Christ and not the pleasure. By it, God gets our attention and He captures our hearts in delight. And this is the point. Pleasure is therefore about worship, and that is what marriage is for. So pleasure was created for holy purpose, and when it is enjoyed according to its design, it is holy. So here is where we must acknowledge that not all pleasure is employed for holy ends, not all pleasure is pure, not all pleasure is right, just as not all worship is. But what we take away is this: we may make a distinction. There is a pure pleasure and there is a perverse pleasure. But pleasure's not the problem. It's seek the pure pleasure. If you get pleasure in the wrong area, you are prone to misunderstand and therefore misuse sexuality even in marriage. What we need to do then is simply seek the pleasure in the right area. The fire is life-giving, but it must be in the fireplace. Well, it's hard to stop time with you. There's so much in my heart I want to give you. Sometimes I wish I had like a spiritual IV I could just plug in and say, do you feel this? This is amazing. I mean, I want you to see the things I see. I want you to feel the things I feel. I want you to know the convictions and the fears I have of God and the love of God and the blessing and the joy of fearing Him and walking with Him in fear in your marriage. It is glorious. We've been married 30 years this year. We're in our 31st year, and I love this woman more than I ever thought I could. I'm more attracted to her now in depths and ways that I never even imagined. It's much more than skin deep. This I want you all to know and have. And it only comes when the marriage is Christ-centered. And the Christ-centered reminders, let's just do it and I'll pray. Number 1, companionship. 2, covenant. 3, character. 4, communication. 5, closeness. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this time. Thank you for all that you've shown us in Scripture. Please forgive me of any light handling or weakness on my part to treat lightly things of tremendous worth. I pray that you would do what I cannot do and make up all the gaps that I left and illuminate and bring understanding, bring conviction, bring encouragement, bring healing. Bless, build up each marriage here. Help them to see these things in your word, to know them to be true, to treat not just information, but to take truth deep within and allow it to transform. I do pray for each marriage here, that they would glorify you and enjoy you in the fullness of marriage. In Christ, amen.